Hello guys and welcome back. I think you have been waiting for way too long for me to finally talk about ancient Greece. Athens, I feel like, is the best part to start from. Not only because it serves as an example for all Greek city-states, but also because it was the place of birth of much of what we call the Western culture. Before we get into that, I must give a very quick intro on who the ancient Greeks were. Let's start. Unlike many of the previous civilizations we have covered in the past, the history of ancient Greeks is documented incredibly well, both in terms of writing and archaeology. Greece was inhabited by a civilization called the Mycenaeans from 1600 to 1100 BC. Bronze Age Greece was filled with small warlike kingdoms. However, they still engaged in trade, especially pottery, with plenty of Bronze Age civilizations, such as the Egyptians, the Hittites, and the Minoans, who they conquered later on, but that's another story. However, in 1100 BC, the Sea People pillaged their way across the Mediterranean, putting an end to most civilizations except Egypt. At the same time, a new wave of people called the Dorians settled alongside the Mycenaeans. Not much is known about the following 300 years, because no written word was left for us to look at, but on one way or another, Dorians integrated and adopted Mycenaean costumes and religion, resulting into what we identify today as ancient Greeks. In 800 BC, we start to see the first instances of a new Greek alphabet and several new Greek dialects. We all see the rise of many new cities, as well as the renaissance of one that already existed, Athens. Athens was founded by Mycenaeans in 1412 BC. It was a kingdom like most others, though unlike many of its neighbor towns, it was never directly affected by the raids of the Sea People and the Dorian immigrations. I guess it can be attributed to its geographical location in the peninsula of Attica, which was not only rich and fertile, but also easier to defend than most of Greece. However, it went through the Dark Ages like everyone else. At the beginning of the Archaic period, so at around 800 BC, Athens was run by a set of ruling elites that controlled most of their resources. According to Aristotle, the elites were the lawgivers, military commanders, religious figures, and rulers of the city. They applied laws as they saw fit, and climbing the social ladder was impossible. The ruling class was divided into 4 tribes. If you were born into one of these tribes, you had a bright future ahead of you. As the time went on in the 7th century, these class differences slowly became based on wealth rather than heritage. This was because of the trade routes that allowed the formation of a new middle class called the Zugati, nobles by wealth, and the Hoplites, noble warriors. In 623 BC, there was an attempt to overthrow aristocratic rule by a tyrant called Solon. He had the support of the middle class, but he was repelled. In response, a man called Draco was nominated city legislator, and he wrote down the city laws for the first time in history, so that everybody who was literate could get access to them and read them. This took away some of the power of the nobles to interpret the law, making them more accessible. Dracos' laws were the first time in Western history where laws were written down, and it reduced some of the crime and put an end to blood feuds in Athens. However, Athens still had a big slavery problem. Aristocrats were more than happy to lend money to whoever asked, but according to Greek law, if you could not pay your lender back, they were allowed to enslave you indefinitely. These indebted slaves were numerous, and it resulted in a crisis in 594, and a tyrant had to take over. This new tyrant was Solon. At the time, tyrants were seen as a good thing. Unlike today, a tyrant was a bringer of order, someone willing to put himself at risk to redirect society back into being functional again. Solon was very well liked. He was a skilled general from the upper middle class with a prosperous career, so Athenians were thrilled to have him in power. Solon's first order of business was to free all the indebted slaves, but he also changed the constitution. He allowed access to citizenship to new settlers, and allowed also people outside of aristocracy to be part in politics. Solon's contributions are outstanding to say the least, and his legacy left a huge mark. Before I get into that, here's a commercial break.
Greek philosophers are definitely the most efficient source for wisdom. Too bad they are all dead, but everybody knows the next best thing. Rappers. What if I told you could have a great modern thinker always ready to spit straight facts right when you need it? You wouldn't believe me? Well, get your trust issues sorted out, kiddo. Because now you can have the Hammerhead Deep Rapper Shark. The Hammerhead Deep Rapper Shark comes with more than 3,000 different quotes to blow your mind.
The best way is to do them. Yo. Life is like a vacuum. It sucks. Bruh. Epstein didn't kill himself.
Wow, get your own Hammerhead Deep Rapper Shark at only 15,99999. You can get your own at the closest crack house.
That was, Anyway, we were talking about Solon. After radically changing the constitution, Solon resigned, ending his one-year term. Things are calm somewhat, but there's still some unrest. The only ones happy with the situation were the middle classes. The lower and upper classes did not take kindly to the new constitution and the new laws. Things were uneventful for 30 years or so until a new tyrant took power. His name was Pisistratos. He was very loved by the lower classes and was a distant nephew of Solon. He was however despised by the upper and middle classes. He was removed twice from office. He had 3 terms in total, one in 561 BC, another in 559 to 556 BC, and the last and longest in 545 until 528 BC. His last term ended with his death. He managed to secure his power because after his second removal, he went around Greece to gather arms and support for his conquest. His relations with neighboring states made him too powerful to remove. Pisistratos is credited for building many roads and aqueducts, as well as expanding the city of Athens itself. He also took advantage of the abundant silver mines in Attica to mint some new coins. Overall, Pisistratos is remembered for being a competent ruler who spread Athenian influence around the Mediterranean Sea, though when he died in 528 BC, he was succeeded by his much less competent son Hippias and his brother Hipparchus. Athens lost a lot of influence, especially when Hipparchus was assassinated in 514 BC, and Hippias became too paranoid to think straight. He was unable to defend Athens by Sparta when they attacked in 508 BC, after the Oracle of Delphi told them to do so. This leaves us with 2 politicians fighting over the position of tyrant of Athens: Isagoras, a supporter of aristocratic government, and Cleisthenes, who wanted to establish a democracy. Isagoras rose to power at first thanks to the foreign support of Sparta, but Cleisthenes eventually took over when the people rose up to support him. Cleisthenes is credited for founding Athenian democracy, one of the first ever democracies in history. He designed a system that focused on representing as many people as possible. He divided the city into 10 tribes. Each tribe had 3 representatives and several small-scale administrative entities called damies. Every citizen could vote for their representatives in the tribe and in the parliament-like governmental organ called the Council of the 500. There used to be a similar council also at the time of the aristocratic rule, but they were all unelected rich people, so it was something completely different. To avoid the rise to power of a new tyrant, Athenian invented ostracism. Ostracism is just an election to vote for temporary exile of someone who has become too powerful. It was not seen much as a punishment, but more like a self-disciplinary action against the system to prevent it to fall victim to a mentally unstable tyrant like Hippias. In 508 BC, democracy had been established, but just 13 years later, the Persian Empire attacked most of the Greek cities on the Anatolian coast, forcing the rest of the Greek world to do something about it. The Greco-Persian Wars are one of the most important events in Greek history, and the Athenians won. This was due to their navy, which was founded thanks to Athens' rich silver mines. Athens then united all its allies in a union called the Delian League, though it slowly turned into an imperial-like force, with Athens at its head. Athenian influence was very large, so large in fact that many other Greek city-states became jealous, and this led to the Peloponnesian Wars against Sparta. Athens could not match Sparta's military military, so they lost in long-term wise, and a new tyrant was established for a while, but he was then removed and democracy was re-established like nothing happened. The period from the end of the Persian Wars to the Macedonian conquest marked the golden age of Athens as a center of literature, philosophy, and the arts. Philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, historians such as Herodotus and Xenophon, the poet Simonides, and the sculptor Phidias, just to name a few, were all great people who lived in Athens. The most influential man at the time, though, has to be the statesman Pericles, the man behind the Delian League and construction of the Parthenon. The city became, in Pericles' words, an education for Hellas, so in other words, the capital of knowledge in Greece. Sorry for spending so little time on the Persian and Peloponnesian War, but I feel like the video was too long already. Pericles is definitely someone worth expanding upon, as well as other generals such as Cimon and Themistocles. Let me know if you want me to expand more upon them sometime in the future. However, keep in mind that many of the historical events I did not cover today, I will cover in future episodes, when talking about other city-states. That being said, thank you so much for watching and stay safe.